What is powerful enough to make Magneto, the master of magnetism, beg for mercy? In X-Men number 11, the original Brotherhood of Evil Mutants era doesn't just end, it gets annihilated. Enter the Stranger, a cosmic entity so powerful he treats both the X-Men and the Brotherhood like insects. He isn't interested in the mutant war, he's here for a collection. This is the turning point where the stakes go from school for gifted youngsters to intergalactic mystery. Magneto is taken off the board, leaving the Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver in a desperate position. Today, we're breaking down the debut of The Stranger and the shocking defeat of the Brotherhood. Yes, hello, and welcome to the channel and another video where we're going to be talking about X-Men number 11. So this is off the back of the previous issue where they went to the Savage Land for a great adventure with Kazar. Now it's a brand new adventure with a chap I've personally never seen before. We've got The Stranger here. Now, we talked about the weird front cover here where you've got the crew, the X-Men here. They look like they're frightened to death for this chap. The artwork is wonky at best, so I think the original concept might have been that they were in a room or some sort of situation like that. I can only imagine that they were meant to be in a room or something and someone somewhere changed it to be a more epic sort of outside location. I mean, these people look a little bit scared, but they don't look totally terrified. It's all very weird. They're pointing up at him, but he's meant to be stood on something there, isn't he? So I don't know what's going on. But in any case, I've reacted on enough. Let's get straight into the issue and find out what is going on here. So here we are on page 1, this beautiful splash here where we've got the X-Men arriving on the scene. They've had the alarm raised by Cyclops. There's a new mutant or a new threat on the scene, and the immediate thought is this might be someone who can be recruited by Magneto, so we better intervene. We've seen that a couple of times now already, but it's back. And we have got what's called the Triumph of Magneto. So the front cover doesn't suggest anything to do with Magneto, but as soon as you flip inside, it's all about Magneto, but also introducing the Stranger. So this story is going to go in some strange directions, I think. But they've got this device. It's a radar image beam, which will depict an image of the threat that's coming through. I suppose a little bit like, I'm reminded of Cerebro in a way, where in modern depictions, the Cerebro helmet will project images in the sphere. I suppose it's the movies that are influencing me there. But in any case, they've got this device here. I've never seen this device before, so I don't know how long lived it will be, but it's projecting this picture of this incoming threat. But the crew assemble and Professor X will explain what is going on. The stakes are raised immediately because whatever being this is has broken the machine, and it must be a being of utmost power. Down here, look, they're saying, do you know what this means? We've never seen a creature like this, or they're calling it a mutant. I'm not sure if it is a mutant or not yet, but they're suggesting it's so powerful, it shattered the machine, and Scott here is like, this is the most dangerous mutant we've ever faced. But the other guys are not really that bothered, so Beast down here is messing around and doing his usual shtick. But Iceman says if our enemies could be beaten by words, Hank, you would win every fight single-handed. And they have a bit of a playful fight look, so Beast is jumping around, and before he can land on this cupboard, whatever it is, Bobby turns into ice and he falls off. It's a bit of levity. So we've got these, on one side of the room, we've got these, ultimate galactic stakes almost. This is the most powerful being we've ever encountered. What's going to happen? And these guys are messing about. I'm not sure Professor X is going to take very kindly to that. And just as I thought, it's a familiar pattern, isn't it? Xavier's like, will you stop it? He calls it horseplay. You might have injured Hank with your prank. And to save your efforts. And that's enough from the mansion for now. We cut to this chap here who's renting this room. He looks odd, doesn't he? It looks just like the Stranger off the front cover. And we get a moment here that shows us he's obviously called the Stranger. He says here, look, I'm a stranger here, and it's in bold. So it's telling the reader, I'm the Stranger. I'm the character that we've been talking about. And she asks him for some scratch, and he doesn't know what that means. And once she goes through all the list of what it means, he means, oh, you mean money. That tells me this is a character who's probably not from this earth. The idea of commerce and money seems strange to him. So he's got these little whiskers and things here as well. So he's from another place, isn't he? I'm gonna suggest. So this first panel made me chuckle. He starts walking around on the street, the Stranger. And he says the traffic is too heavy. It takes too long to cross these busy thoroughfares. Having been to New York myself, I can absolutely agree with that. You won't believe how many times you've got to stop. Do you know, like when on Friends and things, when they talk about they've got to go 10 blocks or whatever, and it's so far away, you would imagine that to be really lazy, but when you've actually been there, it's an absolute nightmare walking around on foot. You're having to stop every 30 seconds for traffic. But in any case, I digress. He decides he's going to walk on thin air to get around this problem. So he's made an effort to fit in and pay rent for a room, but, does he understand that this would be strange to people here? He's an odd fellow, isn't he? I'm not quite sure what his motivations are. But now he's doing this, I'm perhaps thinking I'm mistaken about the front cover. So I thought perhaps it was a mistake that they had him floating in midair. But now that I've seen him doing all this, maybe he is supposed to be there like that, and that is correct. So I might well be wrong on that one. But he is, in any case, drawn to this building. Everyone's going crazy below, like, what on earth is going on? But he just sort of ignores it and walks through this wall. And it looks like somehow he has been summoned by Magneto. So he and his followers have been waiting for him. So here he is with the Brotherhood. So the X-Men are out looking for this chap as well now. And it's just a bit of a play on words. Have you seen anything strange around here? Now, he doesn't know he's called the Stranger. And, it's made in bold. So that's for us, isn't it? And this chap says, yeah, I've seen something strange. All right, you fine around. But he keeps going. He's on his way. But we cut to Scott now, who overhears these coppers talking about this man walking in thin air and then going through a wall, and he thinks that must be him. Now, what I do like about these bottom two panels is, in the past, I did sort of laugh at the fact that the X-Men would turn up and just immediately take over, and the army or the police would immediately acquiesce over to them. But here we've got a dose of reality, actually, where Scott's asking about what's happening, and they say, well, hang on, who are you? Who are you to ask us what's going on? And they try and take his glasses off to see if they can recognize who he is. And you've always got this thing with Scott, haven't you, where if his glasses come off, it's going to be absolute carnage. So he's trying to keep his glasses on. But I enjoyed that it's not just the police telling him what's happening. That's the sort of thing that's been happening in previous issues. I'm thinking mainly of X-Men #1, where they just turn up and say, we want to crack at this Magneto, and they go, yeah, sure, crack on. Here, this is a bit more like, I don't want to say real life because, it is a comic, but they have at least turned around and said, well, hang on a minute. What do you mean? Why are you asking us what's going on? We've got these great few panels here where they get the glasses from him. They've wrestled him from him, and his I-beam is bouncing around the place, and they've got this great image of it just shattering this gun. But it drew my attention to up here because what he says is when he closes his eyes and even covers them with his hands, some of it still seeps out. That doesn't quite jive with the Scott of the future, who can just close his eyes and contain the beam. I will give him a pass and say perhaps he hasn't got it under that much control yet, but it's more of I'm going to say probably a retcon in the future that he can just close his eyes and stop the beam that way. But in any case, he finds his glasses and Beast pulls him up out the way with his feet, showing us his powers. I like a good showcase, don't I? So he's pulling him up with his powers, his feet, and they bounce him around, and they, without a thought really, jump into this ice tube, assuming it's Bobby, which it is going to be, but, what's it doing there? Who knows? I don't know. Let's just jump straight in and find out. As much as I dislike the tube, the imagery of them sliding down it from this angle, this perspective is really great. I really like it. Discounting the fact that they went in head first and they're now feet first, whatever. And they come out feet first again. And Jean telekinetically used her powers to make them land safely. That wasn't strictly necessary, I think, for the story, but I think in these first initial pages, you have to showcase them all using their powers. We always hark on about it, but there's new readers coming along all the time, and it's just stuff like this that gives the new reader an idea of who all these guys are and what they can do. I mean, to the naked eye, you can't really tell what Jean does, but now you know. And you've got this really weird panel here. By today's standards, anyway, it made me chuckle. So he calls her a good girl, for using her powers, and she thinks to herself, oh, when he calls me a good girl, I like it. So we know from previous issues there's been a budding maybe romance, and this is speaking to that, but it's just by today's standards. I think that's just so funny. You won't get that now, would you? But this is interesting over here, where since he's stopped his hijinks, his childish hijinks, has become positively masterful with his ice power. So that sort of tells us he's been maturing a little bit more. So he's gone from that childlike messing about, even though he did do that at the beginning of the issue. Now it looks like he's stepped up a gear. So I do like during these issues, I mean, we're only on issue 11, but you have seen them powering up. And I do always liken it to like an RPG leveling up situation, gaining XP. And we've seen it with Jean, we've seen it with Cyclops. And now we're seeing it with Iceman, where he is upping his game. And Scott has an idea what's going on or where this guy is. And Iceman Still with his boots. I still don't like the boots, but the boots are here. He makes his steps, and at that moment, I guess this is where the stairs are leading to, there's a chap here who calls himself a stranger. So I am a stranger here. So he's not calling himself the stranger, which is good. That would be a weird thing to call yourself, right? But he is a stranger and has therefore become referred to as the stranger. But why should he join Magneto's crew? And they say, we'll show you. Watch. So we've got a showcase from the Brotherhood this time where Magneto uses his power to wrap some metal bits around the stranger. Now, the stranger's having to describe that as it's happening because it's a page, isn't it? We can't see these things actually in motion. Long-time readers will know at this point that is what's happening, but new readers might not understand what's happening here, which is why he's describing it for the reader. But this is why you must join us. We're powerful. We're going to run the world. Join us, basically. Then Mastermind steps in. I'm going to show him what I can do now, and he creates these illusions. So he's at the bottom of the ocean. Then he's in a volcano or something here. And you've got a great insert here, haven't you? His eyes. It's time for me to give an example of my power. And you can see the intensity here. And I do really like these close-up ones. We've seen it with Charles and we've seen it with Magneto a few times already. And they say a lot, don't they? So you can only see that small portion of his face, but it shows us he means business now. And I actually can't wait to get to the next page to see what's going to happen next. Right, so this guy, the stranger, is not messing around. So he sort of cuts through the illusion and it looks like he's destroying the temporary base that Magneto has. I assume it's New York where we're at. It turns Mastermind into this solid block, and it's so heavy that it just crashes through the floor and through this apartment. And they go, oh, good heavens, what was that? And this guy shouts out the window, help, police! And I enjoy it when they do it like that, because it's not spelt correctly, but it's so you can hear it almost. So I can definitely hear him screaming out that something's crashed through the ceiling and we need help before someone gets killed. And it's a good job that the guy shouted. It gives us a nice organic way for the X-Men to arrive to the scene. So I don't like it when it's sort of forced. There's been a few issues here and there where it's been very contrived how they've come to find the Brotherhood. But here it makes sense, and I like it. It feels natural. So they arrive on the scene and they jump in. And I like this bit down here where a member of the public says it's one of the X-Men, some great fantastic menace must be waiting inside. So that tells me not everybody is against the X-Men. So we've seen it where there's been this sort of general sentiment that the mutants are all bad. And this seems maybe it's a bit more nuanced where this person definitely believes that the X-Men are good guys and is going to fight somebody who's not so good. That's how I interpret it anyway. And we've got Angel who's rushed straight in there. He's going to confront Magneto, and Magneto says, well, actually, you're going to taste defeat this time, not me. He flies at him. He's not waiting for backup, is he, Angel? He's a bit headstrong, so he's jumping straight in there. And, I don't know what he thinks he was going to do, because immediately Quicksilver runs round and bashes him. While all this is happening, the stranger, he's just sort of stood there. He's very mysterious. I've still at this point no real idea what's going on with this guy, but he's just watching it all unfold. So we've got this fight up here where Quicksilver's ring around Angel, and I think Quicksilver would take most characters that we've seen up to this point. So he's making short work of Angel, although they do give him a bit of an out with this wing where he says, his wing gets in the way, but I think given enough time, Quicksilver would have won. But Iceman steps in and he helps his buddy. He ices Quicksilver up and stops him. And you've got Scarlet Witch stepping in. I love these panels with Scarlet Witch, and she's such an interesting looking character, isn't she? She's very the design of her, the look of her is great. I love all these close-ups of Scarlet Witch. She's great to look at. Really interesting character visually. But she says, I'm going to use my hex power, and it's all gone a bit wibbly-wobbly for these chaps now, so they're all over the place, lost their equilibrium, and they don't know what's going to happen next. Now that he's free from Quicksilver, Angel attacks Magneto, but he protects himself, and he protects the Stranger with this magnetic field that deflects him. And the Stranger says, I don't need any such protection. I'm going to depart now. I'm off. Magneto says, in typical Magneto fashion at this point in the comics, no, you must join me. If you're not with me, you're an enemy. There's no middle ground with Magneto this early on. Definitely not nuanced in the way that we will come to expect from him in future years. But at this point in time, join me or die is basically his mantra. But he says, no, you can join me if you wish. So come step into my energy. And it looks like they do so. They disappear and they see Toad jumping in. And this vortex, whatever, makes its way outside. Jean and Scott are rushing to try and find out what's happening. And we've got this little nugget here about the romance. If anything happened to you, my darling, I couldn't bear it. So again, for probably, 3 or 4 issues, maybe more now, we've just had thoughts. Nothing's been said between them. Nothing's happened between them yet, but it's there, sort of bubbling away in the background. Scarlet Witch has used her hex power to bring this sort of ceiling down on Hank, and he keeps it sort of off the floor with spinning it with his feet. And Cyclops jumps in. Great picture here. He uses his beams to smash that away through the wall or whatever. And it's a great bit of action there. It looks like it probably only takes a couple of seconds, but in terms of the panels, it's a great visual. I really like that. And the moment I've been waiting for, I'm surprised we've not done this yet. So the amount of battles that the Brotherhood have had with the X-Men, I think this is the first time that Jean, the Marvel girl, has gone up against the Scarlet Witch. And she says, basically, finally, I've been wanting to use my telekinetic power against her hex power. I sort of mentioned it before, there's sort of parallels, aren't they, at this point? So you've got Jean, who's Jean's the only girl on the X-Men, and she's got these powers. Scarlet Witch is the only girl on the Brotherhood, and she's got very similar powers. I call them hex powers, but they look very telekinetic to me. I'm sure they're very different, but the outcome is very similar. And this is a matchup that's been begging to happen for a while. And this is the page I've been waiting for ever since probably issue 4, was it, when they were first introduced? So Scott saves Pietro's life. He uses his beam very carefully to free him so he can breathe, and then he looks like he thaws out, basically. And they've said in this panel here, they've had enough of Magneto. They'll serve him no longer. They've repaid their debt. Scott says, I always felt you didn't belong with his band of evil mutants, which he didn't, and we've known it ever since the beginning, that really they were good guys waiting to be good, weren't they? They weren't quite there yet, but they had all the makings. They realise Magneto's gone with the Stranger, and they're worried he's the most powerful mutant they've encountered yet. And they would be pretty strong themselves if Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch joined them. And they said, no, we've had enough of this conflict. Whether they'll just depart at this point or not, we'll have to find out. Scott fails to enlist Quicksilver and Wanda into the X-Men. As much as that would be awesome, they've decided that they're going to go back to Central Europe. They've had enough of this mutant-on-mutant hatred and fighting, and they've had enough of it, basically. They will turn up again. They're Avengers characters, really, aren't they? But they've left for now. I don't know if, I'm interested to know at this point whether they were planned to be in the Avengers or not. Maybe Benjamin Kellogg or someone like that can maybe chime in and tell me what the situation is here, whether they were always earmarked to be moving across to the Avengers or not. But in any case, they've left the X-Men comic. They're on the way out now. The Stranger, Magneto, and Toad, they end up in some wood. And basically, Magneto says, I demand for you to tell me who you are, and I want answers. What is your mutant power? And he says, I'm not a mutant. I never thought he was a mutant, to be fair. He says, I'm no mutant, and as for my power, it is greater by far than you can ever imagine. It starts to grow like this. Like, you can't see Magneto's chin. In fact, we've not actually seen Magneto's face, have we, up to this point? It's issue 11. He's never once taken his helmet off yet, or given us his real name. But anyways, he muses. He looks like he's stroking his chin under the helmet, which is what I'm saying, which is what brought me to that point about his face. But he's musing that he can't be Giant Man, so what's the deal? So the Stranger's grown to be really big at this point, and Toad hops off. He's had enough, and Magneto's like, come back, I'm still Magneto. He's still got this sort of mindset that he's in control, even when he's quite clearly outclassed here. He says as much, your size cannot defeat me, and the Stranger's had enough. He covers him in this film of anti-magnetic membrane. I've never heard those words put together quite in the same sentence like that before. But even here now, he says, I'll destroy you for this. He's completely beaten quite easily. We move over to the X-Mansion now, where they've brought Mastermind to Professor X to check out what's happened with him. I will be truthful, in all the craziness, I'd completely forgotten about Mastermind sinking through the building. But luckily, the X-Men didn't forget about him, and they brought him back. And this is when, Professor X muses that, he's not as dangerous as Magneto. This guy can basically shake the universe. He's one of the most powerful beings I've ever encountered. And we've got to find this Stranger at once. Now, I'm always fascinated by these different vehicles the X-Men use. They've used quite a few different ones now. This time we've got another helicopter, and it's got these big X's on there. So we're not quite at the jet stage yet, but we're getting there maybe. But the Professor X uses his mind, uses his powers to track down where they are. I can buy that. I don't know exactly how that works, but he does. And they quickly depart. I mean, that's just a means to an end to get these guys back together again, isn't it? So very quickly, they've got to establish that the X-Men have caught up with Magneto, which they have here. And they're marveling at the fact they've been beaten so easily. I mean, look at Magneto's eyes here. He's absolutely fuming, isn't he? Look at that. That's a great little image there. And Professor X says, don't touch the cocoons. I don't know how he knows, but he knows that they're going to be really harmful if they touch them. And it's like Angel nearly bites it. So there's some stuff coming out and it's nearly got him too. Wow, this is crazy. So the Stranger's back. He's still looking massive. And he says the cocoon's really for a journey they're about to take. And Professor X is the first to say, you're not from Earth, are you? This journey's going off-world, isn't it? And he goes, of course, I'm a stranger. And he means that he's a stranger from the stars. So his people are interested in mutants from all around the galaxy, basically. They're interested in mutations. And he's chosen to take Magneto, seeing as he wanted to ally himself with him. This is not quite what Magneto had in mind, but he's taken it to mean he sort of wants to come with me, or I'm taking him because he's showing such a strong interest in me. And he takes Toad too, because his loyalty is so touching. So he takes them both. And basically, look, the three of them are sort of flying off the Earth, never to return. I don't know what the X-Men are going to do about this now, because I don't know that any of them have got the ability to follow. But there's a few pages left. Let's see how this turns out. Now you've got this very interesting panel up here where they all come to very different conclusions. So you've got Beast, who says he'd never imagined it would end like this, and there's no empathy, is there, really, from Jean here, or worry or anything. Just he's gone. Thank God for that. I mean, I think even I would be, he's a foe, but he's still a person. He's been kidnapped to another world, and she's celebrating. And so is Charles to some extent. He enjoys the irony of it, that he fought so hard to get to the Stranger, and that was his undoing. Some strange takes, really. The overriding emotion should be concern, right? I mean, this guy's just come and snatched somebody and taken them away. They're mutants too. He could come back for them. But that hasn't really figured into it. They're just sort of like, oh, great, Magneto's gone, cool. And Scott wonders if this means they need to disband the X-Men. And he says, no, of course not. Thank God for that, because we'd have missed out on a lot of great X-Men stories. But there will be many more menaces to mankind for them to battle, and don't we know it? I mean, I'm not going to spoil them all, but there's some, it's not all just Magneto. There's a lot of villains out there that the X-Men will battle over the years. But the police turn up on the scene, and the guys make an escape. Beast causes a distraction so that Charles can be put on there without them knowing who he is, so he's still got an identity to protect. And the helicopter takes off, and they make their escape. And so the X-Men make it home, and they've not done this before, where they go around the mansion, make sure there's no microphones and nothing to trip them up, and it's a quick security sweep. But I've not seen that in these issues before. That is interesting. And we get to Xavier's office, and he decides that Magneto, Masterman, and Toad can be removed from this machine, from Cerebro, and they don't have to worry about those guys anymore. It's very presumptuous, isn't it? So they've only been gone a couple of pages. I mean, has the day even passed yet? I mean, there's no concern still about what's happened to them. I mean, they're just happy that they're sort of out of the picture for now. And I still think it's very presumptuous to just remove their names. They're going to come back. And I guess maybe that's from a story point of view, is it? For the reader to say, don't worry about these guys for a while? I don't know. I thought they were sort of wasting time with these last two pages, because, at what point in the story do we care that they've made it home? I mean, they've never done that before, is what I'm saying. It's usually that the villain is accosted and then that's it. I suppose it's to get them back to this machine that's going off the charts again, so it's detected another ultimate threat. So it's beep, beep, beeping all over the place, and whatever's out there, so they're looking outside, so it looks like it's come to them, if I'm not mistaken. And the most deadly danger they have ever faced is almost upon us, so even more deadly than the one that was in this issue that was at that point the most deadly. So how many times can you keep up in these stakes? And I'm curious to know what that's going to be. So let's skip ahead and take a quick look at the cover for issue 12. And this is who I thought it would be, but I didn't want to say it in case I was wrong, but it's the Juggernaut. And you get these villains that come and go, like the Stranger, and you've got the Vanisher. Some stick, some don't, but the Juggernaut certainly does stick around for a long time, doesn't he? He's a major character. Well, he's a very important character anyway. So this is his introduction, and look how big his hands are. Look how big. I mean, the Juggernaut is fantastic. It's going to be a great issue when we get to there. And not just that, we've got the origin of Professor X as well. So how that ties in with the Juggernaut is something that we're going to have to find out in the next issue. If you want to stick around and find out what that is, then do please like and subscribe. Catch us on the next issue of X-Men number 12 when we look at the Juggernaut and the origins of Professor X as well. So thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next video. Bye-bye.